Approximately 1 in 4 women settle in a relationship even though they know their needs, wants, and desires are not being met. Why on earth are we settling for less than we deserve?
What's guiding your life? A lot of times it's loneliness, it's scarcity, it's age, it's pressure, and those are the things guiding your life. And when those things are guiding your life, you tend to find what you don't deserve. You tend to find what's first. You tend to find what's available. You tend to find what your, as I call, your eyes pick out instead of your heart, what your mind picks out instead of your heart. And so settling, I love to say this, leads to suffering. And if you look at any area of your life, I can talk about mine, people watching this, every time you have settled in your life, eventually, if you don't change it, it leads to suffering. And that's why people get in relationships where it might be the honeymoon phase at first, but when all those things wear off, you realize that, man, I settled for less. Man, I ignored my worth. And I didn't have patience to actually wait and trust that there was something that was really meant for my life. And so I think it's the impatient part and the timeline part, that comparison part, that keeps a lot of people suffering. When you look online, you see happiness. When you look online, you see the highlights, and nothing wrong with that. Like I say, you shouldn't be posting your arguments online, like post the good things. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you look out there, you think that, man, I'm not enough, or I don't have that, or there's not a person for me. You know, I've had people inbox my wife and say, oh, I wish I had a husband like Trent. And then now you start to have this comparison game. And now you start to say, oh, it has to look like him. It has to be like this. And you have this list of things that you see that now you've created that's meant for your life that was really meant for somebody else's. And so you see a lot of single people that, and I'm gonna say this, it might be controversial. A lot of times single people will say, oh, there's no person for me. But yet there's a person for you. It just didn't look like you wanted them to look. And I get being attracted, but maybe they didn't have the right job, or maybe they didn't have a certain amount of followers online. And you overlook that person based upon what your eyes want, what this preference list wants. And so I would ask the person watching this is like, who's creating the list for you? Who's creating what you need in your life? Who's saying what's right for your heart? Is it social media? Is it the experts on social media? Is it truly what you need, or is it what you want? And you got to get clear on that, because there's a big comparison game. Like if I look out and say, oh man, like their relationship is great. They're happy, they're doing all the things together. Why are we doing this, babe? We should be doing X, Y, Z. And now it puts unfair expectations on your relationship, or even unfair expectations on what you want in a relationship. So you got to be real with yourself.
Oh my God, there's so much there. So you said also it's like, well, when you feel lonely, right?
Yeah.
So how does that, with the comparison thing, then lead to us making bad decisions? And when I say bad, I mean almost, I think it's probably subjective, but
Right.
when you settle for something and you start to give up that light that is inside you, you start to give up that thing that really makes you on fire. That's why the settling thing really hits me hard. And I think that so much of my audience really struggle with it. So how does feeling alone and the comparison game combine itself into this almost like nuclear bomb inside of us?
Sometimes it takes being perfectly lonely to realize what being perfectly loved feels like. In my life, it was my alone moments, which were very hard. It was the moments of me setting boundaries. It was the moments of me saying, you know what? I'm not gonna pursue this. I'm not gonna allow my temptations to make me pursue something, where I figured out who I was. And most individuals, what I see is that they don't wanna be alone. They don't wanna face themselves. They don't wanna deal with their loneliness. And so now, they would rather a little than nothing. And I realized this. And that's
Or
a part of
the wrong thing than nothing.
Yeah, so if you ask somebody, and I would say majority of people, because I know this is true, if you say, would you rather have a relationship that's okay than have no relationship at all? They would say, I would rather have a relationship that's okay. I would rather have a little than nothing, and that's backwards. You got to get to a point where you say, you know what? I would rather have nothing if it's not going to be to the standard of what I want. I would rather have nothing if it's not going to be to what I know that I deserve and respect and need in my life, and it matches my worth. But you see so many people get in relationships and say, well, at least I have a relationship. At least I have a marriage. At least I have somebody, because we're so afraid to be alone, even though we know that that person isn't right. Even though we know the relationship, for better lack of words, it sucks. And we'll rather stay in that than go on this unknown journey, because a known pain in our brain is often more safer than an unknown peace. We would rather stay in the known than actually go in a situation where it's unknown. So even though this is bad, even though it's toxic, even though it's abuse, even though I know this is not right for my life, I'm so afraid to leave this because what if there's nothing better? What if I leave this and it doesn't work out? What if I leave this and this person becomes happy with somebody else? And so now I stay in this place that I don't deserve. And so I see that a lot. People will rather choose a little than actually say, I don't want anything unless it's the right thing.
God, that's so strong. And you say in your book that people almost go towards comfort than growth.
Yeah, they do. Outside your comfort zone is where the change takes place. And I think a lot of people will rather stay in what's comfortable. And what's comfortable is not gonna allow you to grow. What's comfortable is gonna keep you in the same situation. Even if it's conversations, like in my marriage, we have uncomfortable conversations. The conversation that I don't want to have at all. But we have these conversations because we know in order to take it to the next level, in order for us to get understanding, we got to have these uncomfortable situations that lead us to a better situation in our marriage and in our life. And I think so many people are afraid of that confrontation. They're afraid that what if I say what I really want to say? What if I demand my worth? What's going to happen? What if this person leaves me? What if this person that I've known for so long? You know, a lot of times, Lisa, the history keeps people in the misery, as I said. And it's because I've known this person for so long, I'm loyal to this, even though it's the wrong thing. We talk about loyalty so much and how beautiful it is, and it is when it's used right. But there's a lot of people in this world, and I've been this person too, so I raised my hand at some point in my life where we allow our loyalty to keep us in situations our common sense is telling us to get out of. We allow our loyalty to keep us in the wrong things. Some of us are too loyal to the things that are not right for our life. So you have to take your loyalty out of that and put your loyalty into yourself. Put your loyalty into your standards, put your loyalty into your worth, put your loyalty in your values, your principles. And when you do that, you'll realize like, I don't need this, I don't deserve this. And you'll go on that journey of the unknown, even if it's uncomfortable.
Your history keeps the misery.
That's right.
Ooh, that hit me so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's project then, if that is true and you settle,
yes,
where does that end up leading? A year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line?
To regret. And regret is the greatest poison to the soul. If you settle in life, regret is coming for you at some point. And especially in a relationship, you'll end up going from pretend soulmates to roommates. And you're just existing at that point. And it all started from you ignoring with your intuition, with your soul, as I like to say. Listen to your soul. Your soul is telling you that this ain't right. Your soul is telling you that you deserve better, that you deserve more. But your mind, right? The external things, the comparison, what are people gonna say if I leave this? If we start something different, what are people gonna say if I have this divorce? And I'm not advocating divorce, but if I break up with this situation, what are people gonna say? And so I'm gonna stay in this and suffer. And at some point you get to 40, 50, 60, 10 years, 5 years, and you realize you wasted 5 years of your life on the wrong person. Not because you found out they were the wrong person, but because you knew at the beginning they were the wrong person. But they were just right for your loneliness. They were right for your insecurities at the time. And they were right for your temptations. And so you have to be willing to say, I'm willing to go alone if it isn't right. And if you can't have that mindset, you're eventually gonna run into regret. And I think regret is the greatest poison to the soul.
God damn. When I start to think about that projection, because you can't get time back.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't, like it's so fearful and yet such an eye-opening statement that if you can't get it back, how the hell do we make sure that in the now, we actually live the life that we want and what we deserve? And I really do think through, if you settle, because of the comparison thing, because of the fear of being alone, all these things, it can eventually, potentially, I don't want to just generalize, but it can potentially lead to being in a toxic relationship that you don't know how to leave. Because you're like, well, this is better than nothing. And yeah, they might call me names, but it's better than so-and-so over there who doesn't look happy. And so all of this comparison ends up, I fear, trapping a lot of us in toxic relationships that over time, not only do you start to regret, but it starts to erode your confidence. It starts to erode who you are. So how do we start to identify maybe the signs that this relationship is unhealthy, that maybe they are using tactics and tools on you to keep you there and to keep you just settling for what you have.
Facts over feelings. Write down a list of facts in your life, because your emotional self will keep you in situations that you don't deserve to be in no more. So what are the facts, right? Go back to the truth. I always say facts over feelings because sometimes my feelings will keep me in situations that I don't deserve to be in no more. So I go to my facts. What do my facts say? You know, I have this quote that people kind of, they look at me funny when I say this, but I tell people, like, I'm not loyal to people, I'm loyal to my principles. Because end of the day, my good heart will keep me in situations that break my heart. And so I have to go to my principles. What do my principles say? My principles say, I deserve better. My principles say, this isn't right. My common sense is telling me, nah, they're apologizing over and over, but there's no change behavior. They're not serious about this situation. So I always go back to my facts. You can't depend on your feelings. Your feelings will keep you in a place that you no longer deserve to be at. Your feelings will keep you running back to something that honestly you should be running from. And you live in this revolving door. As I like to say, leaving just to come back to the same reasons you left for because of your feelings. And so I would write down a list of facts of what you want in your life, what you deserve, non-negotiables, unapologetically. And you just go by the actions. And listen, nobody's going to be consistently perfect. But if it's always consistently imperfect, it's always consistently terrible, consistently tearing you down, you have your answer. Because Lisa, a lot of people ask, does this person love me? Does this person care about me? And I always tell people, if you consistently asking that question, you already got your answer. Because somebody who truly cares about you wants to put more answers in your life than questions. I don't want people I care about and truly love to think, do I love them or I care about them? I want them to know. And so if they're questioning it, you probably got your answer.
Wow. And so so you've written down your principles?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me what your principles are?
Yeah, like, I mean, I have different ones, but one of them is just personally for me, it's always, this is not a relationship one, but one for me is, it's always, whatever you get around, make sure you make it better. Another one of my principles is never accept less in your life. And listen, I sometimes fail at that principle. I'm a human being, but that's a principle. Another principle is make sure you're giving what you wish to receive. Because that's another conversation that a lot of us, we want to receive certain things, but we're not given certain things. So you set the tone for your life. Another principle is know your worth, demand your worth, as I say in the book. And I live by these things. And the times that I don't live by, Lisa, I always put myself in a bad position. The times when I listen to my feelings instead of my facts, I always put myself in a bad position. So I have to go to the thing that doesn't rely on my emotional state. It relies on, and I created this from my best place. And I know if I stick to these things, it's gonna lead me to a place where I'm happy, where I'm healed, where I'm excited about life.
Good. Okay, so how do you have the confidence to do that then?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking through someone at home listening going, oh my God, I really want to do that. I love that idea. That sounds amazing. I've got principles to go by. But sometimes your belief system is actually getting in the way of
That's
you
right.
even writing that principle down because you're like, I can't do that. I can't tell so-and-so no. I can't turn around to my spouse and say, you know, X, Y, and Z. And their belief system holds them back from writing that principle in the first place.
Yeah, you got to update your belief system. And that's hard, but you got to go back and ask yourself questions. Why am I believing like this? And a lot of times it stems from trauma from childhood. You've probably seen it growing up. You've probably seen as a woman that, you know, you're not supposed to say anything, or maybe your mother, you know, was a certain way towards your father, or your father was a certain way towards your mother. And so you have to like literally obliviate your belief systems and start fresh from a foundation of what does my best life look like? I ask people this question, what does happiness look like? Most people don't know. They don't know what their best life looks like. So if you don't know what your best life looks like, you're gonna settle for a life that somebody else gives you. And the crazy thing about it is they're creating your best life. And so you often think, oh, this is my best self, what they give me. And so you have to be clear on your standards. You have to be clear on your beliefs, and you just start small. Start with one step. What do I want to feel? What do I want to experience? How do I want to live? Do I want to be happy, right? Do I want to be free? You have to write these things down. The hard part is sticking to it. But one of the things that I tell myself that helps me, and this might be extreme, is I always tell myself, Trent, you don't want to die unhappy. And the truth of the matter is, if you stay in your situation, that's exactly what's gonna happen. It's not gonna change. People don't change unless they wanna change. You can hope for their change, you can pray for their change, you can try to influence their change, but somebody's not gonna change until they wanna change. There's no perfection you can provide that's gonna make somebody change. And once I realized that, I said, oh, okay, this is a me thing. Like, I have to fix this. My perfection isn't enough. My doing everything and changing everything isn't enough. And I see so many women, they do that. They change the way they look, they change the way they talk, they change the way they dress for somebody just to get to that point where that still isn't enough. They're always gonna find something wrong with you.
Yeah, and I think that that's one part that a lot of the audience do struggle with, is that if someone gives you the lip service, right, of like, no, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna change, and I didn't mean to, and I'm so sorry, and apologies, you do hold onto the hope that that person's gonna change. And hope can be a beautiful thing, but I think it can also be like the weight around your ankle and then you're thrown into the ocean and it just pulls you down deeper and deeper and deeper.
You will never be enough for a person who is not enough for you. And I say that because I want you to find confidence in that. If somebody always deems you as not enough, you know that person isn't right for you. Like, there will always be something wrong about you to a person that's not right for you. And so when you realize that, don't take it as a bad thing. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's like, okay, this person must not be for me. Even though I love this person so much, I can't be who they need me to be. And you got to let go of that.
How do you then start to maybe get out of the trap that maybe you find yourself in? Because you did this video and you said that sometimes people will secure your insecurities. And I was like, oh my God, oh God. So how do you identify who and how they're doing it? And then how do you get out of someone who may have secured your insecurity?
Especially when you're dating early on, this is just my perspective. You got to be really careful about opening up everything about you. Because I'm a guy, you know what I mean? Like, when I was 20 and 18, I didn't do this purposely. I can honestly say that. But when a woman would say all the things that their ex did wrong, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I don't do those things. Because if I don't do those things, then that person is gonna think, oh, this person is the person for me. And so you have to realize, when you're sharing all your insecurities, a person that not even wants to use you, but a person that's even trying to use you, they're gonna make sure they don't do that. So if it's like, hey, my ex never called me. If I'm the new person, I'm gonna call every single time. Because what that's doing is telling the woman or man in the situation that, oh, this person's right for me. If it's, every time my ex came into the room, they were always on their phone. And so when you're first getting in a relationship, what you're gonna do, if you wanna use this person, you're gonna make sure you put your phone away. Because automatically, that person thinks, oh, this person is right for me. So people who wanna use you and manipulate you, and listen, some people wanna help you, by the way. There's great people that just wanna help you. I wanna be clear about that. This is not like for everybody, but there's certain people that will literally do all the right things to make you think they're the right person so they can take advantage of you. So be very careful and be very cautious about telling all your business so quick.
Okay, so what do you think is the difference then about somebody who's sweet and kind and loving as you, that if you heard something, like if your wife told you in the dating phase, if she told you she was insecure about something, because you're a kind and sweet man, you'd be like, oh, okay, cool, I gotta make sure that I don't do it because she's really sweet and I like her. And then there's the flip side of the manipulator that's like, I get it. That's the thing I'm going to use. So how do you almost like separate the two?
I think it's the consistent actions. I know feelings can lie to you too, but you can feel energy. Energy doesn't lie. Words lie. Numbers sometimes lie. Men lie, women lie, but energy often doesn't lie. And so if somebody's consistently doing the right thing, consistently, really trying to change and help you and not doing these things so they don't want to add to your insecurities, like, it's real. But if you look at a person's actions that, they're feeling your insecurities, they're securing your insecurities, but everything else they still doing terrible. They're still behind the scenes doing things, or still trying to tear you down with their words and their language. And oftentimes, if you want to see somebody's heart, when you first get into a relationship, look at how they treat other people instead of you. Because they're going to treat you right because they want something from your life. but watch how they treat other people. A good person isn't selective of treating people good. That's just who they are. And so oftentimes I will look at that and say, okay, I know you're going to treat me right because you want something, but how do you treat other people? How do you treat the person that can do nothing for you? How can you treat the person that can't pay you back? How do you treat kids? How do you treat all these people? And consistency and congruency of that will never lie to you.
Mm-hmm. Especially if they think you're not looking.
Exactly, 1,000%.
That's even stronger. You also say that they'll try and infiltrate your circle.
Yeah, so when somebody's trying to secure your insecurities, they want to get the people around you on their side, right? They want to get your friends, your family. They want to do all the things, your mama, your daddy, right? They want everybody to like them. So if it ever comes to a time of you having to choose yourself or them or a rocky time, your family and friends, this happens all the time. Your family and friends will be like, oh, don't leave this guy. Don't leave this woman. Like, don't leave them. They're perfect, because he has given them a lot of benefits. It's hard to cut connections when a person is so connected to so many things around you. It's hard. It's kind of like in business, right? Like if you are in a business with a spouse or a friend, it's harder to break that connection when there's so many things that's tied to that, right? You tend to give it more chances. You tend to say, you know what, let's see if we can make this work, because the outcome of this is going to be a lot of conversations, a lot of stress. And so when somebody's connected to so many things around you, it's hard to disconnect from that person.
And it almost starts to feed into even more of your insecurity, because you're like, well, everyone else loves him.
Exactly.
Like maybe it's just me. And then that's like the worst, right? When you start to gaslight yourself and you start to think like, oh, it must be me. Everybody else loves them.
Absolutely.
So part of what we're talking about and getting trapped and stuff is that you write in your book is you go very heavy about people pleasing. And 30% of women know their marriage isn't going to work before they even get married. 30%. Now, when I think about why would you, if you know that that relationship isn't going to last, why would you still do it? And I have someone very close to me and I asked them why. And what do you think their answer was? We grew up, but our cereal options didn't until now. Magic Spoon reinvented and upgraded cereal so it's got the same great taste that you remember, but with 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs in each serving. All Magic Spoon cereal is also keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, wheat-free, and naturally flavored. Click the link below to grab a variety pack and try Magic Spoon today. Go to magicspoon.com/Lisa Bilyeu and use the promo code Lisa Bilyeu at checkout to get $5 off any order. And on top of that, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, they have 100% happiness guarantee. So guys, if you don't like it for any reason at all, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. Click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen right there and use the code Lisa Bilyeu to save $5 today.
Was it comparison?
No, they didn't want to upset people.
Yeah, gotcha.
Everybody had bought their outfits. Everybody was invested in their relationship. And so in the people pleasing, you didn't want to upset people. You didn't want to upset the parents. You didn't want to upset everyone that's already dreamt about the family that you're going to have. And the people pleasing can be so detrimental to us, our self-esteem and who we are. So talk to me about people pleasing, and actually have a quote of yours. You're easily manipulated by perceptions that we are letting someone down.
Yeah. Being a slave to perceptions is one of the things that controls so many human beings, trying to please perception. And I always break it down like this, like there's 3 types of lenses that I talk about in the book, but one of them is the people pleasing lenses. And what that is, it's how you see the world. You see the world, you know, picture you have glasses on. I always say there's a prescription given to you. There's a power prescription that you're supposed to live like that. But then there's this prescription, the people pleasing prescription. And you put these glasses on, you see the world as if, oh, I have to be that in order to be liked. Oh, I have to be like this in order to be loved. Oh, they only love me when I do certain things. And you live life like that, pleasing people. And I've been guilty of that in my life. I've been guilty of that with people, with my business, even me in my space now. And I realized that every time that I was saying yes to other people and pleasing perception and being a slave to that, I was losing myself. And what's the point of pleasing everybody else if you're losing yourself? So I would tell the person watching this right now, you have to let go of that by setting some boundaries. You're gonna let people down. And most people who are, as I call professional people pleasers, triple Ps.
Yeah, triple Ps, I love that.
They are so worried about letting people down. That's their biggest fear. I don't wanna let them down. Like you just said, I don't wanna let my family and friends that paid this money for the wedding, I don't wanna let them down. But what if you took that down a notch? I get that with a good heart, I understand. But what if you raised letting yourself down as the biggest fear? And that's where it changed for me. When I say, yes, I'm afraid to let you down, but I'm more afraid of letting myself down. Because every time I let myself down, I get to a point in my life where I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm stressed. And stress is a silent serial killer that will murder your peace. I'm stressed. I'm hurt. I'm smiling for the camera, but down behind the scenes because I'm pleasing everybody. I'm making everybody else happy. So if saying yes to them is saying no to yourself, is that really the life that you want to live? If saying no to them changes the relationship, is that truly a relationship? And I've realized this, like, no is a full sentence. There's no comma. There's no, whatever type of punctuation, it is usually an exclamation mark. It's no. And I've gotten to a point in my life like that where everybody doesn't get it, everybody doesn't receive it, but I'm okay with it because losing myself is no longer an option. And so who's guiding your life? I would ask you watching this, who's guiding your life? Are you doing things for yourself? Are you doing things to please everybody else? The first step to being unhappy is trying to please the world. It is mission impossible. And so with relationships, I know that can be hard because you're like, I have a husband or I have a spouse or I'm trying to please them. This is what I would say. At least this is true for me. If you giving me a no, and I love you and care about you, if you giving me a no means that it's giving yourself a yes, means that you're giving yourself more peace, I'm gonna champion that every single time. If saying no to me helps you live a better life, I love you, so I'm gonna champion that every single time, even though it might hurt. But I wanna see the best you. So a person that wants the best for you wants to see the best you. So you shouldn't be afraid to give a no to a person that cares about you. They might not understand it at first, it might make them a little, but they'll get it because they know that if you said no, you must have really needed that yes to yourself.
How do you, though, start to make that change if you've always been a yes person?
I'm a future thinker. So this works for me all the time. And I just ask myself, if I keep going on this path, if I keep going down the yellow brick road, where is this gonna lead me to? And so the first form of practice is that you just gotta start saying a no. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's to your kids. I don't care if it's to, and I know that's a taboo one, but I'm gonna be real with you. Like,
why is that taboo?
Because I just think people feel, mothers especially, feel like when they're saying no to their kids, that they're letting the kids down. And I see a big struggle with mothers around that because mom is always the greatest title that they wear, but I tell mothers all the time, you're more than a mother. That's just a title. You're more than a wife. And the more you stay in those titles and you don't do anything else, you build resentment for your spouse, you build resentment to your kids. So say no to your kids. And I've had to do that as a man to my kids. It's not that I'm telling them no because I want to, but daddy needs to take care of himself. Daddy needs to be who he needs to be so he can provide for you guys and make sure I'm in the right space. And so I think a lot of times it's the fear that we're letting somebody down again.
And I love that you're teaching your kids to be able to say no, because
Absolutely.
if you're leading by example, people will see that. And a lot of, I'm going to speak for myself because there are a lot of women, but I think we all face this. You do go to explain. You do go, no, but the reason is because I'm really tired and I did this and this is what happened 3 weeks ago and blah, blah. And it's all out of the insecurity because you want them to feel okay with your no.
Yeah.
And so I know that you're saying just say no with an exclamation, but how do you actually start to do that when to your core is the person that doesn't want to let someone down, and your identity actually is not letting people down?
Yeah, I would ask, where does it come from? You have to, in anything that is a habit to break or something to break, it's coming from a foundational place in your life. And where does that come from? Was it as a kid, you saying no and you got some negative feedback from that? And so you have to go back to those moments and give yourself grace, give yourself forgiveness and say, hey, I was saying no because I needed it. And I know that in my life because that's happened to me where things as a child, and my parents are great, by the way, but things as a child still stuck me as an adult. So I was afraid to say yes. I was afraid to choose myself at times because I felt I would lose people if I didn't. So I would first ask, like, where is it coming from? And then again, you have to change your perspective towards it, right? A no isn't a no. It's really a yes to yourself. So change your perspective. A power perspective says, I am doing this because I know I have to be the best me for those that need me to be. So create a more empowering meaning because I can guarantee, even when it comes to setting boundaries, most people don't set boundaries because of two reasons, worry and guilt. They worry about what people are gonna say or they feel guilty that they're leaving people behind. They don't set boundaries because they think boundaries are some huge wall. Boundaries are not a wall unless somebody disrespects your boundaries and makes it a wall. Boundaries literally are a bridge that leads you to what you need. And so by that change of perspective, now boundaries are this beautiful thing. So relationships, marriages, you need boundaries. It's not a bad thing. Friendships, you need boundaries. So when it comes to you recovering as a recovering people pleaser and healing yourself, I think it's about changing your perspective and the meaning you give things to be able to say, this is for me for a bigger reason, and I'm not letting them down by allowing them to continue to be enabled too. I know with my wife and a lot of people that they struggle with choosing themselves in certain situations because they feel as if the need of them is no longer needed. Ooh. So you feel as if I say no, that I'm not needed no more. And a lot of people's value is tied to being needed. So we will allow people to use us, mistreat us, even as moms taking care of daughters or whatever it may be. And you won't say no because if I say no, they don't need me no more. So a lot of that is tied to ego also. So being able to let go of that and say, you know what, am I helping them or enabling them? And I just feel like if you don't say no, you are enabling them. You are literally being their ceiling in their life. And so I'm just speaking kind of to mothers with kids. Like, you're the ceiling to your kid. I do that with Tristan. I talk about it in the book. Like, we had a thing called Daddy Shop. And every day, and it was so hard because that's like my greatest, like, I don't ever want to tell him no. Well, now it's easier as a teenager. But growing up, I never wanted to tell him no. And he was around 9 or 10 years old. And I was like, man, he's taking so much of my morning. And he should be combing his hair. He should be doing all these things. He should be making his own breakfast. He should figure it out. Did I want to make him do that? No, I loved it. I found so much value in that. I love being needed. I love being dad. I love these things. But I realized that it was taking a lot from my day. And I needed to allow him to be able to spread his wings, figure it out, fail, mess up. And so I said, hey, Tris, today's the day, bro, where you figure it out. Pick your clothes out, do your own hair, cook your own pancakes. And it was terrible the first few days. I mean, his clothes was like, bro, I was like, man, change this, okay? Almost burned down the house cooking pancakes. But now, you know, he's, as I say, like the pancake maestro. His pancakes are great. He gets himself ready for school. He does all the things because I stopped being his ceiling. And that's just one example. But a lot of times we're people's ceilings because we're afraid to tell them no.
Wow, that's so strong. When you said enabling, I didn't quite understand it, but it totally explains it. And that's actually quite a strong thing to keep in mind. If it's someone that you really care about, how do you flip almost like, no, they need me versus like, I'm enabling them to not get better, to not progress.
Absolutely.
That's actually really strong because if you actually want what's best for them, that hopefully will actually be more powerful than you wanting to people please.
Absolutely.
And then you actually said as well, like boundaries, they're, you know, you call them in your book, they're more like drawbridges, they're not walls. And I heard you say that we actually protect our house more than we actually protect our heart.
We do. And our phone. I mean, we protect our phone more than we protect our soul. I mean, you look at somebody's phone, they got passwords, you know, 2-factor authentication, right? Passwords is all over the place. Like, our house, we got cameras everywhere, you know what I mean? And we do these things because we want to protect our house. We want to protect our things, car alarms. We have all the things. We got apps on our phone. Right now, I can look at my house and see who's at the door. But yet, when it comes to your heart, when it comes to your soul, we don't have those things. We let people into our heart easier than we do as they enter our house. Strangers. We wouldn't let a stranger just come in our house. I talked about this in my first book with my mother. My mother was a perfect example of that. Like, if you were in our house, you were trusted. So my mother would talk to you through the door. If she didn't know you, she might crack the door. If you upstairs in our house, you are all the way in. But there were levels to gain entry to our house. But when it comes to our heart, we don't have that. All they got to do is say the right thing. All they got to do is look the right way. All they got to do is have the right things surrounding their life. Oh, this is for me. And we don't make people earn that title. And a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this too, we will give people titles so quickly that they don't deserve, that they haven't earned. Title of a boyfriend that they haven't earned. Title of a husband that they haven't earned. Title of a wife or girlfriend that they haven't. Title of a friend that they haven't earned. But we're so quick to give that away. And I think a lot of that stems from our insecurities, stems from the comparison, stems from, man, if this person is knocking at my heart, if I don't answer, then who knows when the next person is gonna come. So I'm gonna let this person in, even though they haven't deserved and earned the trust from my life.
So what would the surveillance cameras of the heart, if you will, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, but one is consistency. Like consistency. So if somebody's coming to my house and I'm gonna let them in my house, they gotta have some consistency, because consistency equals trust. Consistency makes you a go-to person. And so that's number one. If somebody's gonna enter your heart, it needs to be consistent. I would say number two, if somebody wants to enter your heart and come into your life, there needs to be some type of commitment. A commitment that doesn't work off of convenience. A commitment when it gets hard, they don't run away, they don't leave. A commitment when it gets tough, your private conversations don't become public information. Those type of commitments. That commitment that says, you know what, I'm really here for you. I'm not gonna let a person in my house that I feel like doesn't have that commitment, that hasn't shown me over and over, because if they haven't shown me, then I'm not gonna trust it. And so commitment and consistency equals trust. And you can have your list of other things too, whatever it is for you. Maybe it's how tall they are, whatever it may be. But you can have your list, but commitment and consistency to me are the two things that actually inspire and influence trust in somebody's life.
I love the idea of the levels as well. That really hit me when you said it, because you're like, oh yeah, you may actually just let a stranger, or like you'd ask them like, hey, you know, who are you, before you let them in your house. But imagine you let them in your house and they walk upstairs and walk into your bedroom. You'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
But with the heart, you almost wouldn't. Like if it was like 2 dates later and they're like, hey, let's, you know, there's that, I'm not necessarily talking about sex, but that intimacy that you're willing to let somebody more in, I think, quicker with the heart and intimacy than you would into your house and a specific private room in your house.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't do that in your house, right? You would flip out. And so time reveals all. And when you put people on a time limit, and I'm gonna just put it like that, when you make people really work for it, maybe the word work isn't the right word, but when you make people really earn it, like you will see what's real. Because oftentimes, a lot of people, when they get what they want, you're gonna see how much they really care about you. And if somebody who really, really cares about you, really wants to be in your life, they're willing to wait. They're willing to take those baby steps. They're just as afraid as you to rush some things, because maybe they've been through some things in their past. And so you gotta be patient in the process, and you gotta make sure that your temptation, your loneliness, your horniness, I'm gonna be real, like doesn't control you to put you in a situation that you know isn't right for you, that creates a soul tie that's hard to break.
Soul tie.
Yeah.
That's strong. I think you also said, actually, speaking of being patient, of how when someone isn't patient and they're trying to rush you into a decision, they're trying to rush you to make things, like that's actually a sign of like, hey.
1,000%. That's a red flag. I mean, that's a red flag that's waving into your face. Like when somebody puts you on a timeline like that, it's like, make this decision, rush this, like never be rushed. Always have patience. Like even in my life, from business, like I'm guided by peace. So oftentimes I'm at a different pace of other people. People call me a turtle at times, like, man, you are taking long to make a decision. And it's not because I'm indecisive, it's because I have a process. And I think with dating and relationships, you should have a process. You should trust your process. Your process is a process for a reason. So don't let anybody rush it. If somebody says, oh, well, if you don't hurry up, then, I'm not gonna be with you, then cool. Let them walk out the door. It wasn't meant for your life. And so you gotta have that confidence within yourself, and as you said, belief in yourself to be able to make those decisions.
How do you then build that process? Because you said build the process so that you don't have to rush into a decision. If someone's actually forcing you to rush, you just go back to your process. It's like, no, I'm not done. But what if your process is actually a really short, unhealthy process?
Yeah, you gotta, you gotta change it. You gotta change, you gotta look back and see, this process doesn't work. Just like in anything else. If you
How's
know,
it working for you?
Yeah, if you know this process for the last 5 relationships has laid you in the same place, and I will say this, and I might catch some heat for saying this, but a lot of times, like, people will say, there's no good men, there's no good women. And I always tell people, no, there are great people out there. It's just the ones you choose to date. And I'm just keeping it real. Like, you gotta realize, what about my process is attracting me to this? What about my process is keeping me attracted to the same type of person that's giving me the same type of result, that's giving me the same type of heartbreak? I gotta change it up because something is not working. And so I think it's different for everybody, but you gotta look at that and say, okay, whatever this process was, we are done with it. Delete. We are not doing this anymore. And we're gonna create something new. And I think over time, you find different things you try, it works, it doesn't work, and then you get to a point where you have this master process that has worked for you, or at least you think can work for you.
And that can kind of then be almost like your bumpers, so that if someone comes in and tries to like push you over, you actually have these bumpers. So hang on a minute, this is my guiding light, if you will.
Absolutely, it's your facts. It's your system of your facts that you can always go to be able to trust that.
Yeah. So you got an amazing chapter in your book about boundaries. So I'd love to, now that we've kind of like really established that framework and like the foundation. Now, if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I definitely hear you. I really want to get, I want to have healthy relationships. I want to be able to be confident. How do I start to set those boundaries? And you got an incredible quote. Oh my God, hit me like a ton of bricks. I would rather live cold-hearted than broken-hearted.
Yeah.
I would rather live cold-hearted than broken-hearted.
Yeah, I would rather people view me as that. And that happens a lot. When you stop deciding to take manipulation, because it's gaslighting 101. People will try to flip the script on you. They will try to make you look like the bad person to the world and everybody else. They will try to assassinate your character. They will try to drag your name through the mud so theirs can be clean. And if me choosing me and what's best for me, and me choosing my worth and demanding my worth, and you were trying to make me feel worthless and made me settle for less, if that is cold-hearted, sign me up. I got an icebox, and I'm willing to have that reputation, because I am not gonna live brokenhearted no more. I'm not gonna live brokenhearted for anybody. That's a non-negotiable. And I think that's a big thing, Lisa. Like, a lot of people say they have non-negotiables, but they really don't. They have semi-non-negotiables. It's non-negotiable under certain circumstances. Non-negotiable means I don't care what the circumstances are. I don't care how I feel. I don't care how it looks. I don't care what comes my way. This is the standard that I'm living by, regardless. And so when it comes to boundaries, the boundaries are set to protect my life, to protect my energy, to protect my soul. It's set there for a reason. I built this fence. I don't want to call it a wall, because it's not necessarily a wall unless somebody builds it. And I want to say that it becomes a wall when somebody keeps disrespecting you. Then it's a wall to keep that thing out. Then it's delete the name in the phone or change the name to what they gave you, pain or whatever you want to call them. Then it becomes a wall. But the boundary is set for a reason, to protect me, to keep me in my best state, to keep in my best energy. And so I'm going to trust those boundaries. But also, it is a bridge. And so what I would do, because it's unfair to set boundaries, and I know I said say no with an exclamation, and that's in certain situations. When you have a deep relationship, like a marriage or a relationship that maybe, fiance, or you've been in a relationship for 3 or 4 years, whatever, it's important to make sure you communicate. Communication is oxygen to your relationship. Without it, it will die. And a lot of times we have silent communication. What that is we're expecting somebody to know what you haven't said. We're expecting somebody to do what you haven't expressed that you need to be done. And so when it comes to boundaries, I've seen this. I've been guilty of this myself, where I've set boundaries with people without telling them, and I get mad and resent them for disrespecting the boundaries that they had no idea was there in the first place. So unclear communication leads to unfair expectation. You can't expect somebody to be someone you need them to be when you haven't expressed that. So have that conversation. As I call it, send the invitation out. Just like you would have a party, I would send the invitation out to the party and say, hey, you're welcome to come. This is the party. You can show up. You cannot show up. But I sent the invitation. And it's the same thing with my life. If I'm going to change, I'm going to grow. If I'm going to shift who I am and stop, whatever it may be, I sent the invitation out. And you know what? Everybody didn't show up. But you can't be mad at me because I told you where I was going. I told you what I was doing. And so that's a big part of the boundaries is send the invitation out, have the conversation. And then from there, you're clear. You know that it's no unclear things. They know exactly how you feel. They know exactly what you expect, and they have a choice. They can respect it or not. But then it's more clear to you on where they stand.
Yeah, you say in your book, peace is a choice.
Absolutely it is. Peace is a choice. Accepting less is a choice. Demanding your worth is a choice. Everything is a choice. So choose wisely. This whole book is literally about a constant battle. The external versus the internal. I believe, and I could be wrong, but this is my belief, my idea, that you're in control of two things. What you give. Nobody can stop you from giving anything. You can say whatever you want, give whatever you want. You're in control of that. And for this conversation, what you accept. Nobody can make you accept anything without your permission. So I'm going to say this, and I know it might hurt a little bit. It might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. It might not be your fault what happened to you. It's probably not your fault what happened to you. But what you do with that information and what you do from there on out, it's your responsibility. And sometimes, because I know somebody out there probably needs to hear this, sometimes another chance don't need to exist. And I believe in chances. I'm guilty of it. I'll give chances with plural S's. But the more chances you give someone, the less respect they start to have for you. And it's true. And so you have to be able to be clear when you're setting your boundaries and having these conversations to say, you know exactly where I'm at with things. And I'm going to tell you right now that another time will not exist if it's going to be like last time. And you got to stand on that. That has to be a non-negotiable. We negotiate on our worth way too much. And these external things are controlling us. And I know you know this, Lisa, with your YouTube channel and all the people you coach and mentor, I bet you I'll be safe and say 99% it's the outside things that are controlling who they are and how they feel. They've accepted something that they didn't have to accept. Right? If I was to give you a cup of poison and I said, drink this, would you drink it?
No, I'd throw it at you.
Right? Exactly, right? You'd be like, you're crazy, what? But what's crazy is that, and I know this seems so common sense, what's crazy is that so many of us will accept emotional poisons every single day. And we will drink those emotional poisons, like security and insecurities, the lies, the manipulation, the apologies without changed behavior. And we keep drinking this emotional poison until it kills us internally. We stay in a situation that we know we shouldn't be in.
This is so profound, so profound. How do you then start to, well, so actually, let me start with, you actually said your non-negotiables become negotiable depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
And the more chances you give someone, the more they disrespect, or they know
less respect they have for you.
the less respect you have. So putting those two together, so that how do you then make sure that your non-negotiables stay non-negotiables so that you don't end up, kind of going, oh, okay, well, just this time, because now I think you also have another quote where it's like, you teach people how to treat
you by what you accept. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And so I'm not saying I have myself all together, but I rarely get disrespect because I respect myself. And I'm not gonna say people are intimidated to disrespect me, but they know what I'm not gonna accept. I set the tone for my life, how I carry myself, how I live, what I don't put up with. And it's the same. Like if I see a person that looks like, you know, that they're you know what I mean, that they're hurt.
Yeah, sure.
Then it's like, oh, they're prey. Oh, I can take advantage of that. Oh, they don't respect themselves. They disrespect themselves. How they carry themselves, what they do, what they say to themselves, how they live. Oh, snaps, I can take advantage of that. And that's why it's important when I say what you give yourself shows other people how to respect you, shows people how to treat you. So when it comes to your non-negotiables, as you were saying, like when it comes to chances, I don't know if this was the question, but like when it comes to understanding to give another chance or not, I always look at progression. Like I will never quit on progression, ever. If I see somebody that's trying to do better, that's literally putting the effort to change, then I know my non-negotiables maybe can slide a little bit because I know that person's putting in the work. But if I see a person where there's no progression, because the problem is, I would like to say a lot of people, they fall in love with potential. And potential a lot to you. Potential is something that's hardly ever met. You fall in love with the potential of what this could be. You fall in love with who they could be. You see the best in them, just a little bit, and you fall in love with that. And you become blind to the reality of who they are. So this might be a little bit tough, but stop falling in love with the potential and look at the truth of that person. What they giving you, what they're consistently doing to your actions, because that's who they really are.
So based on how they respond, your non-negotiable can change over time. So you're not saying you have to do it in stone and build the wall and never knock it down, but it all depends on how the other person shows up and makes the effort to change.
Yep, and it has to do nothing with me.
Right.
Kind of talked about it earlier. Like I want to see your change. So it could be somebody that's an alcoholic, right? And maybe they treat other people different, right? Of course, you can give me the flowers. You can change for me. You can do all the things. Maybe you were abusive in language. You can change the way you talk to me. That's great because you want me back. It's called push and pull, right? It's like, I'm gonna pull you back by saying all the right things. Once I get you back, I'm gonna go back to the same things and push you away. So I wanna see your change that has nothing to do with me. So if you're an alcoholic, I wanna see your change with alcohol. I wanna see your change in how you treat people. If you're a person that has a poor relationship with your kids, I wanna see that relationship be built with your kids because that's true change. I don't think change, it can be dimensional, but I think change is a holistic process. So I want to see that you're changed holistically, not just the words and the things that you give me, because that's another tactic of just getting me back.
So how do you start to, going back to the non-negotiables then, how do you start to set those non-negotiables? You are an extremely strong, emotionally strong, it seems. Emotionally strong when it comes to this sort of thing. You're very clear on your worth, on where you stand, what you'll accept and what you won't accept. That's so powerful and enticing, and I think everybody really at some point would love to be able to have those skills. So as we're talking about this, so with boundaries, how have you been able to, because I don't think, because you've even said, and you talk about it in your book, it's not like you've always been like this. It's been your own growth and your evolution. So if someone's never set a boundary before right now, and they're like, okay, I understand why. I just don't know how to even get started because I know that I'm going to get pushed, because I know that people are going to comment, oh my God, you've changed. Oh, you know, my identity now is getting lost. How do you even get started on that? You said invite them. But what does that actually look like? Like, take me through a real case scenario of like, if you imagine you never had a boundary with your wife and now you actually have to set one.
Yeah, so I would have a conversation with her. I would sit her down and I would tell her clearly, like not beating around the bush, this is what I need in order for me to become the best me. This is what I need in order for me to become the man that you need me to be. I need this. And you might not agree with it. You might not understand it, but I'm letting you know that this is gonna help me become better for everything around me. And so I would go even internally, like I'll have that conversation, but then I'll first ask myself, and this is what you can do right now with setting a boundary, what do you need in your life? Start there. What do you need in your life? Or if it's a relationship, what do you need in your relationship, your marriage, whatever it may be, what do you need? That's the first thing, because you can't set a boundary if you don't know what you need. The second thing I would ask is, by setting this boundary, what is it going to immediately give your life? So if I set a boundary, you know, I need peace in my life, right? And I set this boundary of, maybe it's, you know, I got a boundary that I'll share on here. Like before 12 p.m., I am very hard to reach. It doesn't mean like if my kids come, I'm like, hey, I'm busy. No, it's not that. But they understand, my wife understands, like that morning time is my time and I show up better. So they experience the boundary. That's the thing too. Like when they come into the experience of it and they see, my wife has boundaries. And at first I'm like, man, I don't want you to set that boundary. But now I realize how it's helped her. And I experienced that. So I understand it. So I would say bring them into the experience too. Just say, hey, give me a week, give me 2 weeks, a month, and just let me do this. And if it's something that doesn't change anything, you don't see anything different, we can have that conversation. But just give me this trial with this and let me try this. And so I would think about, what do you need in your life? I would think about, you know, how's it gonna make you feel? Because you gotta have something to keep you committed to that boundary. And how it makes me feel is what keeps me committed to it every single day. And then the third part, and this is, I think, most important, is what is it costing you not to set the boundary? The opportunity cost. What is it costing you not to set the boundary? When you understand opportunity costs, it changes everything. If I don't set this boundary in my marriage, it's gonna cost me my damn marriage. If I don't accept this boundary in this it's gonna cost me this If I don't set this boundary in my life, it's gonna cost me these things. Get clear on what it's costing you, because when we understand opportunity, it creates healthy fear. A healthy fear is, man, if I don't do this, this is what's gonna happen in my life. So start there. Like, what does it cost you not to set the boundary? And if you're in a toxic situation, by not setting this boundary, it's costing you your life. And I'll tell you that. Like, I know that might seem extreme, but we're gonna be extreme, but it's costing you your life. It's creating a slow death emotionally inside of your life. And I've seen it over and over and over, where that slow death leads to mental health issues that leads to suicide. And I know that seems very, very extreme, but it's a life or death situation with these boundaries. And when you think about it like that, it changes everything.
Some truth right there. I love it when you give it hard as well, because like, I just want the truth.
Yeah.
And in putting it in that perspective, and you said that multiple times in this interview, of like the lens that you look through and then how you perceive things, I think that in flipping the boundaries, because so many people, especially my audience, like we want people to like us, right? We want to be people pleasers. We don't want to ruffle any feathers. But because of that, it's led us to being in relationships that don't serve us, wrecking our confidence because we've been around people that just try to bring us down instead of lifting us up. And so when I think about how you get over that, how do you get over the internal struggle that you're facing in order to impact your external and create a difference, and that hard truth of this could actually cost you your life. And it hit me when you even said, like, if I don't set a boundary in my marriage, it costs me my marriage.
Absolutely. It will. And I think you get clear on that. That's the healthy fear that you have to create in your life, in every area of your life. You're gonna be consistent to the things that you understand what it's costing you. You think about consistency in everything in your life, you're consistent because you understand what it's costing you. You're consistent at doing this beautiful, amazing interview in your podcast, because you know if you don't do it, what it's costing. We talked offline. There's people getting help from this. There's people's lives being changed. But so you're gonna show up because you understand what it's costing. And if you look at your life in every area, especially your relationships or the relationship you're trying to get out of, when you get clear on that, you'll be consistent. So what does this look like for a person that's in a toxic situation? I'm gonna get clear on, man, if I don't set this boundary, if I don't get out of this, right, I'm gonna take it to the extreme. It's gonna cost me my life. And that's gonna be the fuel, the engine that I stay locked onto, the fact that I stay locked onto, that's gonna keep me progressing towards what I need into my healing. That's gonna keep me moving on. And it's gonna give me something to move on to.
You obviously know that I've been struggling with a lot of health issues for many years now. And it got to the point where I was so sick with so many gut issues and immune issues that it actually almost became life or death for me, where it's like, I have to start setting boundaries in my life because I was showing up for everybody else except for myself.
Yeah.
And it was when we were building Quest, and Quest was growing so quickly, and I didn't want to disappoint my husband. I didn't want to disappoint our business partners. And so I was showing up for everybody else. And then my health just went to, down the toilet. And that forced me almost to then set the boundaries. And I found it very difficult initially setting the boundaries because I was a person that didn't have any boundaries.
Yeah.
And so when I first started setting them with my family, especially, because it was, okay, on weekends, I'm not going to answer my phone.
Yeah.
Like, my phone is going to be off. And I decided that on my own. I decided this is what I need because it's life. Like, I actually need self-care in order to get my energy back, so I can actually eat, so I can put on weight again, so I can actually live. Like, it was extreme. And so hearing what you're saying, that boundary piece in the life can actually end up being life or death sometimes.
Absolutely.
For some people, especially when it comes to self-care and things like that. And I got a lot of pushback initially because everybody's like, you can't switch off your phone. What if we need to reach you? And so I then went into exactly what you did, where you explained, this is why I need to do it. I need to get healthy. I need to have the peace. I need to protect my space. And the people that respected it, my family, were like, okay, I hear you. And it's going to take us time to adjust. And then there was an adjustment period. But once you're able to do that with somebody, that boundary feels like a beautiful dance.
It's a bridge.
Instead of, the bridge, instead of like this, like clashing together.
That's right.
And so, the life and death piece was really strong for me. And then also, when you talk about boundaries, I've heard you say, like, you show up for people when they have problems until the problem becomes your problem.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I just talked about that yesterday.
Did you really?
Yes, and it's so true. Because I have a very, very kind heart. Like, I really do, and I really care for people. But yes, like, I will help you with any problem as best as I can. There's two things. Number one, you gotta at least try to take the advice that I'm giving you. You gotta try, because then you're just wasting my time. Why are you asking me, right? Are you asking me because you want me to coddle you? You want me to make you feel good about a situation? So that's number one. And number two is that problem can't become my problem. There's a boundary that was set, in the last few years, that I told somebody that you need to stop being there 2 a.m. And I get it, that's your friend, that's their person, but they're staying in the same situation, complaining about the same thing, and they're not doing anything that you suggested. And all you're doing is enabling them. So for me, it's that tough love that says, you're like, I'm not gonna allow the situations that you are not willing to even try to change, because some people just want, I get it, to be heard. They just want a Band-Aid over their situation. I'm not the Band-Aid person. Like, I'm trying to be the surgery person. I'm trying to help you heal and trying to help you fix it and change it. And listen, I know I can't do it for you, but don't call me if you don't want solutions, because what happens is now your stress becomes my stress. And now what happens is that you're waking me up in the middle of the night because you're not dealing with the things. You're talking about the same things. Like, and can I say this?
Yeah, please.
I had to tell somebody recently, what are you gonna do about it? And
they'd come to you with a
yes,
problem. And
the same problem. I said, okay, what are you gonna do about it? We know, we understand this person is like this. It's the same thing over and over and over. What are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna keep complaining about the things that you're not willing to change? Because at some point, it's not their fault no more. You know who they are. You know what they're giving you. You know exactly who they are. They have shown you who they are. But you're choosing to believe something different. That is on you now. And that's a conversation a lot of people don't want to have, because as long as we are blaming the other person, even if they're treating us bad, it keeps us in a place of, oh, it's their fault why I'm not healing. No, it's on you now. You have to find the strength to be able to let go. And I know it's hard, but I think it takes more strength to hold on to something that's ruining your life than it is to let go at some point. And so, yeah, I had to make that boundary set, and it was tough. It was a hard conversation, but I refused to allow somebody's stress to become my stress. And now their problem becomes my problem. And now I'm a problem to my kids. I'm a problem to my team. I'm irritated, all because of a situation that has nothing to do with my life.
So, oh my God, I love this. So how did you actually articulate that to them then?
At that point, just like that. Because, you know, I'm I'm always gonna at first give, you know, steps of why, and I'm gonna give reason. But again, when you're a grown adult and we both know what it is, I'm gonna be stern and firm. And I'm gonna stand my ground. And I'm gonna be very unapologetic about it. And I had to tell this person, you're addicted to your sad story. That's the problem. Your sad story is bringing you value. You're still talking about the person. I get it. I understand. And if you listen to this, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but you're still talking about the person from 5 years ago. They moved on with their life. They live in their life, but they're still controlling you. And I think, Lisa, one of the worst ways to live life is allowing something or someone that's no longer a part of your life to continue to control your life. So I said, at some point, you're either gonna stay in your sad story and it's gonna be the rest of your story. You're gonna tell your grandkids that it was this person's fault. Cool. Or you're gonna turn the page and start a new chapter. And that person started a new chapter.
Wow.
Some people need to be straight up, because I don't like to sugarcoat at some point, because I'm gonna let you know I love you too much to not tell you what's real. I love you too much to see you walk off a cliff and not tell you to stop. I love you too much. So yeah, I'm gonna yell at you. I'm gonna give you some tough love, and you're probably gonna thank me later, but probably months later after you get out that situation.
How do you make sure then that they don't then spiral even more down in those situations? Or are you just saying, look, that I just can't take that on?
You know, it's tough at times because some people have, but I'm willing to live with that, because this is a situation where I'm talking about 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 conversations.
Right.
And you know what I mean? It's not just like one or two. This is like, they're living their life on repeat, the same thing, right? They are rewinding the things that need to be deleted from their life. And so at that point, yes, some people have lost themselves. But the truth is, and this might not be popular to say, sometimes you gotta lose yourself. I lost myself and I found my best life. So who am I to get in the way of that? And so what I do is I release you. I'm not here, I call it playing God. I can't play God. I can't make you do something. So I'm gonna release you. I'm gonna tell you what I would wanna say. I'm gonna tell you my piece, take it or leave it, but I'm gonna release you. I'm gonna say, this is the life that you're choosing. I'm always here for you if you need me, but I can no longer keep having these conversations because it's taken away from my life. And so that's a boundary. I'm saying yes to myself at that point.
If you're not feeling strong and healthy on the inside, it's nearly impossible to show up and crush your goals and dreams. Take it from me. I ignored my health for so long, and it had such a negative impact on my life, my confidence, and my self-esteem. And that's why I want to tell you about Joy Women's Wellness. Joy Women's Wellness helps women like you and me take control of our well-being so we can feel like us again. Joy Women's Wellness will do a simple blood draw and then give you a super in-depth functional health report. And together with your clinician, you can come up with a game plan for how to balance your hormones, get your energy back, and start sleeping through the night. So prioritize your health and just feel better from the inside out. Click the link below and run over to Joy to get your levels checked right now. And guys, if you use my coupon code, they're gonna give you 10% discount so you can go and get started. That's choosejoy.co. Oh, that's so beautiful and so hard to do.
It is.
Because we're going to go back to something you said right at the beginning of this interview, where you said we carry so much shame and guilt with us.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that shame and guilt, and I mean, God, this just came to mind. Do you know Bozeman St. John?
I heard in that,
okay.
yeah.
I've had her on my show before, incredible. And she was in a toxic relationship. And her boyfriend at the time was living in a different country. And so he was manic depressive. I mean, there was a whole lot of issues, and she just kept setting these boundaries. And he kept threatening her in order to try and renegotiate her boundaries. And it was like, I'm gonna kill myself. So he kept threatening suicide. And that was him trying to control her. And one day she's just like, no, I'm not gonna be controlled by him. And he calls her and he threatens to commit suicide. She goes out, she ignores the call. She comes back and there's like 3 voice messages. One voice message is like, I told you not to go. I told you I was gonna take my life. Second message is like, all right, you've been warned. Third message, he's on the bridge about to take his life. She calls him, he took his life. And when I think about, obviously going to extreme now, But like the fact that she's been able to get through it and not hold on to that guilt, because I asked her, like, I think it's very important to have set that boundary, because then the other world is you live your entire life being controlled by someone who's manipulating, using their life as the threat to control you. But it's so freaking hard. Obviously that is extreme, right? And I'd never wish that on anyone, but that's the sort of type of guilt that we end up carrying with us of like, if I say no, if I push back, if I set a boundary on someone that actually needs my help or is asking for the help, how do I let go of the guilt no matter what ends up happening to them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And when it comes to guilt for me, and I still deal with guilt from time to time, but I have to always go back to my process of guilt and just ask myself a few questions. Like, did I give my all? Did I really give this person a chance? And if I have nothing but yeses, then I have to still be able to let go of the guilt and move through with it. Because truth is, like, you don't leave people behind. They choose to stay behind. And that's helped me so much in my life because yes, I've had guilt to where it's like, man, I want to do everything for everybody. I made a promise to my mother, and I'll just share this, and it's on my heart too. I made a promise to my mother when she died that everybody would be okay. It's all on me. And that was so heavy. At the moment, it was like, yeah, I got everybody. But I carried that weight with me for years. And I'm trying to make sure everybody's okay, everybody's good, and all the things. And it was literally tearing my life apart. And I felt guilty starting to tell people no. But I realized, like, wait a minute. I sent the invitation. Wait a minute. I did my best. I did help. And so I changed the conversation. It goes from, instead of thinking about what could be, it's more about what really was. What did I really do? And I hold on to that because we can go, well, if I don't do this, then this person might do this and this and this and this. And like, that's a rabbit hole that doesn't serve your soul. I go to my truth, and whatever comes with that, yes, it might hurt, it might be devastating, but I know I made the right decision because I go by my principles and I go by my standards. And so I had to be able to tell people no and break their heart. But and there's two sides of it. One side was, yes, their life got worse. The other side was for other people, their life got better. And so, yeah, it's tough to set boundaries, but you got to, because the alternative is you lose yourself. Like with the lady you were talking about, if she don't set those boundaries, that might be her that's dead at some point. And so I would rather, set a boundary that I know leads to a better life.
And I know how close you were with your mom and, going through her passing, how difficult that was. Most people carry that for the rest of their lives. Most people live their entire life going, I made this promise, how can I, the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, I told my mom, and then their life becomes worse because of that. And I love how you just processed it, because I think, I didn't know your mom, but as a woman, if I had a son that did that, it's like, I'm proud that you were able to do what's best for you.
Yeah. I was killing myself, literally. Trying to make sure everybody else is happy, everybody else is good. And when you're in a position, I'm sure you can relate, like when you're in a position where, you have the opportunity to help things and change things, and you wear so much of that. And there's a lot of people that might not be in the position I was in, but they're in that position where they feel like it's all on them and they have to do so much. And I got to a place where I was depressed and I couldn't even serve my mission and my purpose. So I had to set a boundary with grief. Like I had to set a boundary with that and say, you know what? I can't continue to do this. And how it changed was I thought about my mom and I thought about who she really was. And if she was to have a conversation with me, she would call me and say, Trent, you better stop trying to take care of everybody else. You better go live your life. They grown.
Yeah.
And so I replayed those conversations in my head and I made the decision to, as I would call it, let people fly.
God, let people fly. Whew. You also say that you've just got to be willing that if you set this boundary, if you do X, Y, and Z, that you have to just be willing that some people aren't gonna like it, and they're going to walk away. And so this thing that you've maybe built and you've got your heart on and you set the boundary for your own peace, if they walk away, you just got to be willing to let them go.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if it's my introverted self that makes it a little bit easier for me, but I'm willing to like lose it all for my peace. And I'm okay with that. I've been at rock bottom before. You know what I mean? I've seen the worst of the worst, and I'm okay with going back there. I'm okay with spending time with myself. Now that's a big thing, Lisa, like knowing how to spend time with yourself and enjoying your own company. I talk about in the book, disconnecting off to me going out in nature. That is me going out and figuring out who Trent is. Who Trent is despite the followers, despite how people see me, despite all the status stuff in this world. Like, who am I at my core? What do I need? Am I being who I need to be? What do I need to fix? What do I need to change? And I spend so much time with myself that I've learned to enjoy my own company, right? I have a quote that I love to say, like, you know, I'm marching at the beat of my own drum and I'm loving the sound. At some point in my past, I didn't like the sound. I was afraid that people are like, oh, you're beating too loud or you're off beat. Like, and that used to bother me. But now I love the sound because I spend time with myself. And I think the more you spend time with you and you fall in love with you and you fall in love with who you are, you start to realize, like, if it goes back to me being by myself and me being alone, of course I don't want it to, but I'm okay with it and I'll figure it out.
So the beat of your own drum, you talk about a story in your book about how you were going out with all the boys and you were going to clubs and
Yeah.
So that's you beating at somebody else's drum.
Yeah, for sure. If somebody else controlling the sticks and beating on my drum, or, you know, it's me allowing my drum to match the cadence of somebody else. Because I'm so afraid, right? You know, you listen to a band, like, you can't be off beat, you gotta match the band. And so with me, I wanted to, even though I didn't like playing that sound and playing that cadence and rhythm, I knew that it was more to my life, and I knew this was expired. But it's like, man, if I get off beat, if I do something different, then I'm gonna stand out in the worst way, where I can be crucified or, like, you know, where my friends will leave me. And so, yeah, I've learned over time, and it takes time. And I know a lot of people listen to this, like, easier said. I had somebody tell me this yesterday, and I actually had a different approach. Somebody said, easy for you, right? And I said, you're right. At this point it is. And I said, you know why? Because when I was at my rock bottom, I said, one day I'm gonna get to a point in my life where somebody says exactly that. It's easy for you, because I put in the work. I put in the work. I did all the things I need to work on, my emotional my state, my emotional health. You're right. Or somebody says, oh, you're so lucky. Yeah, I wanted to get to that place where people said that. Because I knew at my rock bottom, that was my vision, to get to a place where people call my hard work and my success luck. People call my family life luck and all these things, but it's the work that was put in for me to get to this place.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I love that on your rock bottom, you're like, I want to get to that one day. Because I was like all offended. I was like, what do you mean it's easy for him? Do you know the work this man's put in? Like, I'm like defending you, like jumping in your...
But that's how, you know, that's how we deflect, you know, and I understand, because I was at that place. Oh, that's easy for you to say. And we can make up all these stories to make us feel as if, you know, our situation, our circumstance is permanent. Like, we don't have a way out. Because if we get information, that's the scary part about information. Some people don't want to hear it or receive it, because if I have the information on what to do, then I have no more excuses. And so that was me at a point. But yeah, I got the other day, oh, it's easy for you to say.
And I think it's self-soothing in that moment, right? If you're really struggling and you feel almost a little hopeless or helpless, like looking and saying that goes, yeah, well, it's easy for them. And now it's almost giving you permission to not try.
There you go.
Which is, I don't think, a wise way to do it. But
right.
You even said, like, when you hit rock bottom, I've been there, so I'm not afraid to go back there. What's the difference then between someone like that, or someone like you that can say that, and other people who are like, I've been to rock bottom, I never want to go there again, and so they actually then adopt unhealthy behavior, so they never get to rock bottom, versus you saying, I'm going to adopt such healthy behavior that even if I get to rock bottom, I've been there, so I can do it again.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the work that was put in that rock bottom. You know, I think the people that say, I don't want to go back there, which, I mean, I don't want to go back there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But if you do,
I'm okay. I'm okay. And it's because of the work that was put in, you know, at my rock bottom. You know, sometimes we get saved at rock bottom in the way of, like, you know, we get in a relationship or something like that, or it takes us from rock bottom, but we never really put in the work. And so it's like, I don't want to go back there because I don't know how to deal with that. And so if you're that person right now, you need to start having habits and things in your life that are foundational, that if something leaves you, if you lose something, you don't lose yourself. And so that's why I say that, because I did the work and I continue to do the work day in and day out. The things that we always talk about that seems like, oh, that's going to change your life, that's going to help you. Oh, no, we look for this magic portion or formula to love ourselves. And the truth is like, you giving love to yourself, that's it. You stop accepting less, you pour into yourself, you do the things that make you happy, you fall in love with the image you see in the mirror, your flawed, imperfect self, and you love that because you're perfectly you, and you really embrace that. And that's what it is. We can have steps all day long, but that's what it is. It's being good with who you are. That's worth. And a lot of times with worth, because that word popped in my soul, I talk about demand your worth. And what really shifted my life is realizing where my worth was at. So some people are afraid to go back there because their worth is tied to all these external things. If you have a conversation with somebody, they don't feel worthy because somebody doesn't love them. They weren't accepted. The job doesn't appreciate them. Everything external. Your worth is tied to something circumstantial. My worth was tied to football. My worth was tied to my friends. And so when those things left, I didn't feel worthy. What if you tied your worth to something that was permanent? And I have my faith, I have what I tie mine to. What if I was given worth at birth? And I know that seems like a cool saying, but it's true. What if I'm uniquely me and I'm going to embrace that? And so there's some things, if you're watching this, you don't feel like you're enough, you got to cut the strings. Is your worth tied to your job? Cut the strings. If your worth tied to social media, the algorithm, cut the strings. Even in the relationship, cut the strings. Yes, I know it's a part of who I am, but who I am is who I am. That adds to my worthiness. It doesn't make me worthy. So that's what really helped and shift my life, really taking back my worth and saying, I'm worth it, I've been worth it, and I will forever be worth it. I say that every single day because, Lisa, I'm a human, and sometimes I don't feel like I'm worth it because of whatever reason. But I tell myself to remind myself, you're worth it, not because of what you do, not because of what you provide, not because of how people see you. You're worth it because that's how you were created to be.
Oh my God. I was like trying to remember everything you just said. Like there's so many good quotes there, but like they add to your worth. They don't make you worthy.
They add to it. They add to your life, right? We don't want to, and people have different views of this, but for me, I don't want a person to complete me. I want them to add to my completeness. I want to have two complete people come together and make something even greater. Now, there's times where, yes, that person is the missing piece to your puzzle and it works perfectly. But oftentimes, you're looking for somebody to fill a void in your life that's missing. Maybe, it was daddy issues growing up. So you're looking for somebody to fill that void, but they're really not complete themselves. They just are the missing piece to your puzzle in that area, but they're really not complete, or you're not complete. And you get into a situation over time where you realize like, man, I'm not even complete. I don't even know who I am. This person doesn't know who they are. And there's so many people in that. So I tell people, come complete and let a person add to your completeness. Let a person come with a full cup. Let them make your cup runneth over. Do that. And it's hard to get to that point because it takes patience. But I think a lot of eyes are looking for the person to complete them, the person to fill that void, instead of looking within themselves to give themselves that completeness.
To be honest, I just think it's dangerous because the second they're in a bad mood or they're going through something, now you're relying on them to complete you, but they can't even complete themselves in that moment.
That's right.
And so they're bringing that energy to your life. And so how are you going to complete yourself if you're just accepting that from someone else?
That's right.
So you actually mentioned about how you were a footballer. And I mean, you've had your whole career is just mind-blowingly incredible. And I love how you've really evolved. But take me back to that moment, right, where you talk about it in your book, how you had these dreams, right? You were playing football, you were going to buy a mansion, your kids' college funds were all sorted. You'd envisioned what that was going to look like. And it didn't pan out. And you said I can't remember the words, but you blinked and you didn't then continue your football career and you ended up living at home or something like that.
Yeah, I was staying with my parents.
Yeah, so how, knowing that, right, you have a vision, it doesn't pan out and it actually becomes the opposite. What habits did you actually have to adopt then in order for you to build your self-worth back and feel good about yourself that now your title of what you do or who you are didn't impact your worthiness?
Yeah, man, that was the hardest, well, up until a few years ago, that was the hardest time in my life, for sure. And I had to build me. Like, I didn't know who I was. Without football, like, I've never worked a 9 to 5 in my life. Even to this day, I never worked a 9 to 5. Since I was 5 years old, I played sports. So when I lost that, and I like to tell people, if it's not sports, think about your everything, whatever that is. And I lost that at 25 years old. Okay, what do I do? Because I never worked a job. At school, I took speech communications. It's funny how it worked out, but I took that because it was the easy class. I had no interest in being a speaker. I just wanted to make it to the NFL. So I lost that and I lost my life. So at that moment, I was really faced with a choice. You can sink or you can swim. One of my best friends committed suicide. So that was a big catalyst for me to say, man, I'm not too far away from that. So I got to do something with my life. I got a 1-year-old son. And I remember at my parents' house in my room looking around at trophies and pictures and Tristan's big picture in my room, still vivid. And I asked myself this question, is it over? That's it. But something inside my soul internally said, this is just the beginning. And there was no, Lisa, physical, and I want people to hear this because it's so easy to be like, oh, Trent, I see millions of people. It's so easy. No, please hear me when I say this. There was no external evidence of this would be my life at all. I didn't even want to be a speaker. I'm an introvert by nature. It's just weird how it works. So for me at that moment, I said, okay, what do I need in my life? And so my organization is Rehab Time. But Rehab Time started with the mindset of giving myself what I need. It wasn't to be anything what we see now. Mind. I need to strengthen my mind. I started reading books. I didn't read books then. Like, my mentor was Lil Wayne at the time. Like, seriously.
Not to this Lil Wayne,
No, for sure. But yeah, absolutely. That was music. That was my thing. Hip hop. Those were my mentors. The Jay-Z's, the list goes on. Those were my mentors. I never picked up a book like that, especially finished the book. And I picked up personal development books. Then body. I said, you know what? I'm in shape, but I'm abusing my body also by things that I shouldn't be doing, putting in my body, drugs, alcohol, etc. Hard drugs, to be real at that time. So I said, I want to cleanse my life and detox myself. And then the last part was soul. With my faith and my religion, I said, you know what? I need to really live it. I need to see what it's like to seek a relationship with my creator, not the one my grandmother gave me, not the one my mom gave me. I need to make it real. And so what I did was I proved it to myself. So we talk about strategy. I would tell you to prove it to yourself. That's it. Go prove it to yourself. And I'm going to say this. Go try. Go find out. I went to go find out. I thought my life was over, Lisa, so I went to go find out. And what I found out, that was just beginning. So if you feel like your life is over, you feel like you're heartbroken, you feel like there's nothing more to your life, go find out. Spoiler alert, you're going to find out that you made for more. You're going to find out that it's better to your life. And that's what I did. So yes, habit-wise, the reading, the morning routines, like all the things like that we talk about, I did those. But the main thing was my only job in that moment was to prove myself wrong because I thought my life was over. That's it. I want to go prove myself wrong. And I did. And now where I'm at now, I go prove myself right because my mindset has shifted. Like, I believe that I could write a book and things like that. And so go find out. When that person says, you can't live without me, go find out. Go see. And what you're going to find out is that there's a future that's waiting to give you better than what you're currently settling for.
The go find out is so amazing. Like, that should be like a tagline for you. Because whenever I'm in an emotional space, I need something to go to. Because I know you said earlier, right, facts over feelings. Yeah. I'm the feelings person. I'm like, well, my feelings must be right because I'm feeling this. And absolutely. I realize it's not. Because every time in hindsight, not every time, but most times in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, Lisa, you were too sensitive. This happened, so you were agitated, whatever.
Right.
And so what do I do to get me out of it? Because I need that like snap. If I've just got, go find out. Lisa, just go find out. It kind of eases the stress and the anxiety of, well, what if it fails? What if, right? My mind starts running. And so I love that. And then also it allows you to almost push back when someone's being a little manipulative or toxic.
Yeah.
Because my ex-boyfriend before Tom, he was extremely verbally abusive, manipulative. I don't throw around the word narcissist, but maybe. And I remember him turning around to me one day, and because I just had enough, right? It was like, I just got the strength, and I'm just like, I'm leaving. And he turned around to me and he said, you're never gonna find anyone that loves me as much as I do.
Yeah.
And that hooked me.
Yep.
It really hooked me. And I don't know at what period this was in our relationship, but I'm almost certain I stayed for another year. And so that idea of, we'll just go find out.
And you found out.
I did find out.
And you found, exactly. I mean, I teach on moving on. I have the art of moving on that I teach on. So like I have a program called that. And that's what I tell people, like, cause that's the number one thing. Like I feel like, and I just say, all right, go find out. Let's just start there. And it's a big part of moving on because what happens is, I always say moving on is less about what you're moving on from, and it's more about what you're moving on to. It's completely that. A lot of times we focus on, oh, I'm trying to get over this person. If you focus on getting over this person, you're putting your energy on this person. So moving on says, I have no idea maybe where I'm going necessarily, but I know I'm not staying here. And so that's my trigger. Go find out. You might not know what's gonna happen, but you know that you're not staying here. And what's gonna happen is you're gonna find that you're capable. You're gonna find something inside you that you love about yourself, you didn't realize about yourself. You're gonna find an inner strength. Me as a speaker, I went to go find out everything in my life. Me as a football player, I went to go find out and I found that I'm actually worthy of something. And that was the energy that really pushed me through my hardest times.
Well, now I love how this conversation has really evolved, right? Because if you've gone from identifying who isn't good for you, putting in the boundaries, knowing your self-worth, and then the moving on piece, what other things, you said that you have a course, what other little things, if you don't mind sharing, once you're starting to move on, what are the things that you can keep doing so that you don't keep getting pulled back? Like I said, right, my ex hooked me. So, because that first step, I think, is it alcoholics, where it's like, it takes like 7 times or something to go from like, to try and actually give up alcohol to, you know, out on average. So I'm thinking about the moving on step of like, how many people didn't do that first step? It's like, okay, I'm moving on. And then they get pulled back in. What other things can we do to make sure that we don't get pulled back in?
Yeah, so I'll say this, because we talked about boundaries, you talk about having your facts. So all those things need to be in place. Like you need to have reminders, like of where you gotta have reminders. Like I said, put their name in the phone. They're a liar, put liar, pain. Like I got people on my phone that literally when they call, I'm like, yep, I remember. You know what I mean? I'm being honest, I do.
Yeah, no, it's
I do, because
tactic.
I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to have always a strong heart or being strong emotionally. I don't always trust myself. I'm reminded, and that triggers how I felt every time I see it. That triggers what they gave me. So you gotta have those things. But what I would tell you, and I tell this to everybody, when you go find out, the first step is just to survive without that situation. Because if they were your oxygen, it's gonna be hard to breathe for a little bit. I don't care what anybody says, how they did you, there was something there at some point that chemically you were bonded to. That's why it's hard to break free from things, because chemically we're bonded to that person. So it's easy to say, just move on, but chemically it's hard to. So we have to detox our life from that. So the first step is just survive and figure out what that looks like. If you gotta, you know, call up the girls, you know what I mean? You gotta do certain things, whatever it may be, figure out what that looks like. It's gonna help you survive and help you from getting back. And don't trust yourself. So make sure you set up booby traps. Like when you try to go back, make sure you don't trust yourself. And then second thing is ask yourself, what is it gonna take me to get from surviving to actually thriving? Because that's when it changes. And I'm sure in your past relation, once you realize like, wait a minute, my life is better off without this dude, I definitely ain't going back. Like, I realized like what that was like, I definitely ain't going back. And that's the place you have to get to, but it takes time. It might take a month, it might take a year, it might take 2 years, but you gotta be committed to that and knowing that that is coming, because once you get to the place where you know that you can live and thrive and live your best life without that person, oh, you ain't going back. It's over then, but you gotta get there. And so have those things set in place that when your emotions take over, you're still focused on what you're moving on to and not what you're moving on from. What happens is, in your mind, we're thinking that, man, I can't live my best life without them. And then once you start, whether it be getting in shape or you start a business and you start doing these things without them, subconsciously you're realizing like, wait a minute, this person was probably holding me back. I'm a better version of myself without them. So you prove it to yourself over and over and over again. Then it becomes easier to keep moving forward with your life. So put some goals in place, do some things, right? Treat yourself right. Set some big goals for yourself and accomplish that. Because once you do that, it becomes a lot easier not to go back because you realize they were holding you back. So I've seen that help so many people. It's helped my life, even with friendships. Once I realized like, man, this was a dead weight, I definitely am picking that weight back up.
I loved your analogy with the addiction thing because we don't think of it like that. If someone, let's face it, was an alcoholic or had been doing drugs and was a drug addict for a long time, you would go, okay, they need rehab, they need a program, they need steps. Yeah. You can't just go, stop, and then expect them to live their life.
Love is the strongest addiction. It's the strongest addiction. Love is stronger, I feel like, than any drug. I think love is the strongest freaking addiction. And you got to look at it like that. Like you're addicted to that person. That's what it is. You are chemically tied, soul tied, whatever you want to call it. You are chemically bonded to that person. So every single time you go back, just for a little bit, then you start the process all over again. And it becomes that harder to leave that situation. So look at it as an addiction. Label it. I know it's a strong word, but label, it's an addiction. So I need to have a process, 3 steps, 12 steps, whatever steps you may have, to be able to detox from this situation so I can be healed from it.
And then it also eliminates the potential like guilt or shame of like, but I really want to go back. It's like, it's okay to want to go back, like have that instinct.
Of course.
Because just like alcohol, you're never going to be like, well, tomorrow you should be able to walk into a bar and be able to deny the alcohol. Like anyone, even, I've never been addicted to alcohol, but I could just imagine like, oh no, of course you would never expect somebody who's addicted to alcohol and trying to overcome it to be able to walk into a bar and say no. But with relationships or love, with the heart, it's like, oh, what do you mean you want to go back? Don't you remember how he treated you? And so that really hit me so strong.
That's not healthy healing. Like if you are denying that you're not healthy healing. Like I even be like sometimes we go into another relationship before we heal. That's not healthy healing. And sometimes it works. Like I'm sure there's a unicorn out there that's made it work, but a lot of times then we bring our hurt self into a good relationship. We make people pay for mistakes they didn't make. And now we bring in our past mistakes to something that's good. So you're right. Like when it gets to that point, you got to say, man, I even missed, like, it's okay to miss somebody. It doesn't mean you're not healing. Like you're going to miss people. You're going to miss that person. But just because you miss them don't mean you need to go back to them. You got to remind yourself of that. But to think that, oh, I'm over this person and to get online and try to prove, that's another people pleasing. I got to prove to everybody online that I moved on, that I'm good, that I'm strong, that this situation ain't bothering me. That's crazy to think like that. Especially you've been in this situation for years. Like you're not weak because you're weak towards them. That's love. So it takes time to get over that. But you got to go through proper healing to get through that. So impressing people online, even to be real, being in competition with that person, that happens a lot. It's, they with somebody, so let me get with somebody. Let me show that I'm more healed than them. Let me show that, yes, I'm over this person. And that's a problem. And what happens is you create an unhealthy cycle of relationships. And there's people out there, and listen, if you're here, you can change it. So I'm not judging you. This is all out of love. But you create an unhealthy cycle of relationships over and over and over again. You never giving yourself time to heal, which goes back to the beginning of our conversation. You got to learn how to love to be with yourself and go through that process of missing that person, crying, screaming, wanting to call them and not calling them. You got to go through that. It's a part of the process of healing.
Just make sure no matter what, you protect your peace.
That's right.
Trent, this has been absolutely incredible, dude. I freaking love you to bits. Your book is amazing. Where can people find you and your book that is now officially out?
It is. You can find it at TrentShelton.com, Amazon, anywhere you buy books, and then follow me at Trent Shelton.
If you want to learn the 4 signs that you're in an unhealthy relationship, then keep watching.
Yeah, so like a lot of communication is nonverbal, and oftentimes we overlook the nonverbal communication when we're talking about communication skills and how we communicate. And a huge thing is turning towards someone when we're communicating with them. How often when someone's trying to talk to you, are you looking away or looking at your phone? Are you not looking at them? And so that's just making eye contact, turning towards. There are really simple things that we can do to improve our nonverbal communication and really send signs of engagement and safety to the other person when they're communicating with us, showing them that we're curious and that we're interested. And so the Gottman Institute has done tons of research on couples, and they follow couples. Over 6 years, they'll follow couples. They'll check in 5 years after marriage, 10 years, and to really see, they're trying to figure out what works in relationships and what doesn't. And so in their research, they've found that there are 4 types of communication that predict the end of a relationship. So the first type of communication that predicts the end of a relationship is criticism. And we all know what criticism sounds like. It's, you never help with the cleaning, you're so forgetful, or you never consider me. And you'll notice that criticism almost always starts with the word you. And I found that when one partner is trying to bring something up that they want to talk to the other person about, maybe it's something that they're wanting to change, they do it by criticizing and you statements. And I see that all the time. And we can predict the way that a conversation will go 96% of the time based on the first 3 minutes of the conversation. The first 3 minutes determines how this conversation is going to go. So it's really important to learn how to start a conversation well. And how often do we try to bring something up with a criticism by criticizing someone? And so instead of starting a conversation with you statements like you didn't do this, or you're this, or there are so many you statements that we say.
We have a lot.
Yeah. I give couples a formula to use that starts with I. And the formula is I feel blank about blank. I need blank. So for example, instead of criticizing and saying you never help with the dishes, you can say, I feel overwhelmed about the dishes. I need some help. And it's even better if you end with appreciation or a compliment, because it helps your partner to feel appreciated and loved, and they're more likely to help you out. And so then contempt is the second type of communication, and this is the single greatest predictor of divorce, according to the Gottman Institute's research. And contempt looks like mocking the other person, ridiculing them, calling them names and insulting them, or mimicking or using sarcasm or rolling your eyes. Those are all examples and signs of contempt. And it's really just a disregard for the other person that comes from a belief of moral superiority. So it's fueled by negative thoughts about the other person. And an example of contempt would be rolling your eyes and saying, I get it, you don't have to tell me a million times. Do you think I can't hear or something? That's one that I've heard, and that one's rough. And so the antidote to contempt is building a culture of appreciation and respect in your relationship by reminding yourself of the other person's positive qualities and why you love them, and expressing appreciation and feeling gratitude for what they're doing right. It's looking for what they're doing right and assuming the best rather than assuming that they have bad intentions. And then doing small positive things for them every day to show that you love them.
Man, contempt is such a strong topic, and I believe it becomes a stacking stone. It's not just that you wake up one day and then all of a sudden you have contempt for somebody. So what do you do, or how do you prevent contempt? So you actually said, saying nice things to someone, like maybe on a daily basis or things like that. Like, that's great. But how do you prevent someone else for having contempt for you?
You can't, right? We can't control others' behaviors. We can't control others' thoughts. We can set boundaries and ask for respect in communication. We can ask them, hey, can we retry this? Can you, or say, I'm feeling attacked right now, or I'm feeling hurt by the way that you communicated that. Can we try again and reconnect? And so there are ways you can't control whether or not they feel contempt or express contempt, but we can set boundaries, and we can ask for respectful and kind communication.
Wow, I really like that. So if you're sensing contempt in your partner, kind of stop, address it, say, hey, you've really, express how you feel about that. I think that's super important. And then highlight it. Because here's, I think, what a lot of people do, myself included, back before I had a growth mindset. I would ignore it, right? I would ignore the contempt. And it would just start to build inside me, right? People start, he keeps giving me the dirty look, but it's like, oh, it must be in my imagination. And you end up ignoring it until one day it ends up becoming like the biggest fracture in your relationship.
Yeah. And it usually does. It builds up slowly over time. If we don't address it immediately, it kind of sits in the back of our minds, and then it happens again and again and again. And that's where we start building these protective walls that create distance. So that, we, naturally we're wanting to protect ourselves. If we're feeling attacked, or if we're feeling like the other person is expressing contempt, we might get defensive. And that's the third one, is defensiveness. And that's really a way that we try to protect ourselves, by reversing the blame and making it seem like it's the other person's fault. And this almost always escalates conflict, because when one person gets defensive, usually the other person does too. And so we combat defensiveness by taking responsibility for our actions and getting curious and trying to understand, where is the other person coming from? What is their perspective? And can you set aside your own thoughts and feelings for a moment to try to understand where they're coming from? Can you feel empathy for how they're feeling? And can you take responsibility for your part in the conflict or in the situation, and offer an apology if it's needed?
Yeah, that's so true. I'm curious on what the fourth one is.
Yeah, the fourth one is stonewalling, which is shutting down and withdrawing because you're emotionally overwhelmed. And when stonewalling happens, your nervous system is flooded, which means that your heart rate is increased and you're in fight or flight, or your sympathetic nervous system's activated. Your body releases stress hormones, and now you've dropped down into a freeze state. And when you're in a freeze state, you'll usually stop responding. You'll turn away, maybe you'll act busy, or you'll tune the other person out and pretend like you can't hear them. And you're really just trying to avoid confrontation, and you're shutting down in self-protection. And stonewalling is especially frustrating to the other person, because usually they take this to mean that you don't care, because it seems like you don't care. And so how we address stonewalling is we take a 20-minute break to self-soothe. And I say 20 minutes because research has found that it takes an average of 20 minutes for your body to calm down and for your nervous system to regulate when it's dysregulated, or when you're flooded. So take a break, plan a time to come back to the conversation, and spend those 20 minutes practicing self-care or doing something that will help you to regulate and soothe your nervous system. And something that's interesting is that research has found that women tend to criticize more, and men are more likely to stonewall.
That doesn't surprise me, to be honest. You just mentioned flooding, but I've never really heard much about it. Can you talk to me a little about flooding?
Yeah, so flooding is when we have our neuroception is always looking for cues of danger and cues of safety. And if we are getting some signs of danger, usually we are in conflict. Our neuroception is always asking, is this person safe? Can I trust them? Do they care about me? And if we start to feel like they don't care, or if we have any cues of danger, our nervous system will go into fight or flight, and our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. And so typically then our heart rate will increase, blood pressure sometimes increases. We start to feel emotionally overwhelmed. We can feel anxious. And so when we get flooded, we'll either fight or flight. And if we feel like neither of those are going to work, we'll shut down, and we'll drop down into that freeze state that we talked about. And that's typically when stonewalling happens. But the key is to learn how to regulate your nervous system. If you notice that you're starting to get activated and flooded, to take a break, to self-soothe, to regulate your nervous system. Because if you're flooded, your prefrontal cortex is essentially offline. We're not able to think clearly. We're not really able to fully listen to another person and understand where they're coming from, because we're in that survival mode and all of our protective defenses are up.
Yeah, I love that, that breakdown. And then I've heard you say one way of just kind of eliminating it is just like give your partner a hug. Yeah.
Give your partner a hug, make a repair attempt. turning towards the other person to co-regulate. A hug is a way to co-regulate. So we can self-regulate, which means we self-soothe. Breathing exercises are a really great way to self-regulate. Progressive muscle relaxation. There are a lot of different ways that you can regulate your own nervous system, but we can also co-regulate or regulate our nervous systems with another person when we're flooded to help us calm down. And so a hug is one way to do that. Taking a deep breath together, just pausing to repair and send some cues of safety and remind each other that you care in that moment, because that will help your body to feel more safe, and that will help your nervous system to relax a little bit more so you can shift back into that parasympathetic, safe and social state.
Yeah, there's something, the power of a hug, and that's the one thing that bums me out about COVID is I'm such a hugger, and I got so much pleasure out of hugging people that it's sadly no longer something I can regularly do. But there is something to a hug. I totally agree there. So the studies on the Gottman Institute, you said that they followed couples 6 years after they got married, and the people that ended in divorce turned out they were only turning towards each other 33% of the time. And the couples that ended up in a successful, happy marriage turned towards each other 86% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, just turn towards.
Yeah, turning towards. And so we make bids for connection to our partners, to people all the time. Whether it's just saying, hey, look at this, or asking a question, or anytime we're talking to someone, we're making an effort to connect with them. And so they observed couples, and they noticed that the couples that didn't last, they didn't turn towards each other. And the couples that did last, when one partner tried to get their attention, they turned towards them. They responded. They put down what they were doing. They looked up, looked at the other person, and responded. And I've started to be very aware of that in my relationships. If someone is seeking my attention, am I making them the priority, or am I making whatever else I'm doing the priority? And where are our priorities here? And it's so, so important to respond and to turn towards each other when someone's seeking your attention.
Yeah. And I actually heard someone a long time ago, actually, it was like a study, and they said you can also tell how well someone's going to last based on how they tell the story of how they met. So if you ask the couple, like, oh, how did you guys meet? Based on if they say it in like a lighthearted way, if they jump in on, oh no, baby, it happened like this. Or if one person's just saying, the other person's staying silent. And I was like, that's actually really fascinating to see. And so now I'm very conscious. If anyone ever asks me, I'm putting like excitement and energy, because I think it's really good to keep going back to your roots of where you as a couple first started and keep that energy alive.
Yeah, I've noticed that in sessions when I ask couples about their relationship history, couples that are in happy relationships tend to remember and share their positive memories. And they also frame their difficulties or struggles in the relationship from a place of learning. They talk about how they've grown from their struggles and how they draw strength from them. And in couples who only share negative memories and have difficulty remembering the positive memories, that's when you know that negativity is starting to outweigh the positive in a relationship. And usually this escalation of negativity happens gradually and slowly, and it happens over time. And you start to express less interest in each other's lives. You show less appreciation. You compliment each other less and less, and you'll slowly start to notice their flaws and start to entertain more and more negative thoughts about each other. And without that open communication and repairs, before you know it, you're feeling a lot of resentment and frustration. You'll feel like you've fallen out of love and lost the spark. And you'll start this cycle of negativity and distance that really doesn't turn around without effort. So we have to retrain our minds by starting to focus on our partner's strength and positive traits. And we have to start making repairs by making efforts to connect and communicate openly and show appreciation and love for each other. It's really interesting. We've been talking about some of the Gottman Institute's research, and they found that in stable, healthy relationships, the ratio of positivity to negativity during conflict is 5-1. And then during normal interactions outside of conflict, it's closer to 20-1. So for every one negative interaction, there need to be 20 positive ones. And then in unstable relationships that are headed towards separation, that ratio is closer to 1-1. So for every So yeah, that's one negative interaction for every positive interaction. And those are the couples that don't last. So this means that for every one negative interaction during conflict, you need at least 5 positive interactions to balance it out if you want to keep your relationship stable and healthy. And those 5 positive interactions are the repairs that we've been talking about, their efforts at reconnecting, they're turning towards and just slowing down and showing that you care about each other.
Girl, I'm so obsessed with stats, and that is so impactful. What would you then suggest? Because I love stats. It wakes me up, and then I go, well, now how do I use that stat to benefit my life? So when I think about people at home, it's like having a relationship for 20, 30, for the rest of your life is difficult. We change, we grow, we're always evolving. So to me, I put so much time and attention into my marriage, into my relationship, and addressing the things that are wrong instead of putting blinders on. And so if people, and look, that's worked very well for me in my relationship. And so taking those stats, what would you suggest people do? Is it kind of stepping back and saying, all right, I've just heard this stat from Jordan. Do I stop and just assess myself for like a week and go, how many times am I criticizing my partner? How many compliments did I give them? And vice versa. And then go, oh, it's like 2 to 1, and kind of like snap yourself awake. Like, how do we actually then take that data and go, let's use this to benefit our relationship?
Yeah, I think it's the little things that you do every day that matter. And it's the little stuff that adds up over time and can make a really big difference. And that's also the preventative work that you can do in relationships. So it's the everyday little things like complimenting your partner, expressing appreciation, reaching out to show affection, and creating small rituals of connection throughout your day, like giving a hug and kiss every time you leave the house and when you come back home. And I'm not sure who first came up with this idea, but there's a metaphor that I love that is the emotional bank account. So every relationship has an emotional bank account, and you can make deposits into this account every time you listen with your full attention, every time you keep your promises, when you show affection, when you make repairs, when you do something nice for the other person. And you make deposits by doing things that build support and love and trust in the relationship. And then you make withdrawals every time you criticize or break a promise, or when you don't look up from your phone when your partner's talking to you, when you turn away, when you don't respond. And your account balance usually determines how you feel about the relationship. It indicates how well you communicate and how well you resolve conflict, and it's an indicator of the health of your relationship. So you want to make as many deposits as possible into your relationship's emotional bank account to pull from when you're going through a rough patch, or when you're going through a hard time, or when you're in conflict. And so it's the small things over time that really do add up and make a big difference.
Do you also hold the account details of your partner? Because what I actually loved of what you said is you look at your own deposits, right? What are you putting into the relationship? What are you taking out of the relationship? That was so strong. And then it started to make me feel like, should we do that for our partners as well? Or is that like now a trap where people are like, look, see, I've written down, you've only made like 1 deposit. Like, is that a good strategy? Do you think a bad strategy?
Yeah, I don't think that is really helpful, because that can bring resentment. But if you're noticing that you're needing more deposits, you're needing more attention, affection, your positivity from your partner, that's a really great conversation that you can have together. And that way you're both conscious and aware of how can we show each other more love? How can we be making more deposits? And so framing that in more of a positive way, because I don't think the scorekeeping is helpful.
I know, that's what I was like, it really is helpful for yourself, but it almost does the complete opposite when you do it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I also heard a quote from yours that's super interesting. You said a lot of conflicts come from not feeling seen or heard. And when we don't feel seen or heard, we don't feel loved. That was so strong, because we're talking about a lot of elements here on what make up a successful relationship. And it kind of comes all the way back around to feeling valued, feeling validated, wanting to be seen, having every right to ask to be seen. And then if that is the one thing that falls down, then you actually do not feel loved. Like, that's so strong. So how do you ask to be seen? How do you ask to be heard?
Well, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman, but the whole premise of that is that we tend to give love in the way that we like to receive it. And sometimes we're needing to receive love in a little bit of a different way than it's being shown. And so just having a conversation with your partner about, hey, I'm needing to feel more appreciation and love from you, and this is how I would really like to be loved, and it's okay to ask for that, and it's okay to ask, hey, can we have some more conversations? Can we go on a walk every evening and just talk? Because I want to get to know you better, and I want you to get to know me better, and I want to stay curious about each other's inner worlds and what's going on with us.
So where's the fine line between asking your partner to reciprocate all these things that you've said, hey, I want to go for a walk, once a day. That's something that I actually really need to feel connected to you, to feel seen, to be heard. And they turn around and they say, well, that's way too much. You're being very needy. I can't give that to you. And then it becomes, I think, a struggle between how they see it and then how you see it.
Yeah, well, and I think in a healthy relationship, you care about each other. You care about each other's feelings and needs. So if one person is feeling like I need to be more connected to you, then it's just a really important conversation to have of this is what can we do to help you to feel more loved and safe and connected. And it's I think a lot of times we feel guilty, like we shouldn't have to ask for that validation or appreciation or love or to have to ask to do activities that help us to feel more connected. But it's totally okay to ask. And it's so important to ask because otherwise we end up, like we talked about before, brushing things under the rug. We end up feeling disconnected and more distant. And so it's if they're not wanting to do that, then, we need to have a conversation about, do we really care about each other? Are we really staying curious about each other's inner worlds? And are we showing empathy for each other's needs? Because if not, then that's an issue. There are so many little ruptures every day, whether it's just, that moment of not turning towards each other that we talked about. And that's totally normal in relationships, but the whole, like what makes the biggest difference is repairing, how we repair those ruptures. And do we turn towards each other? And do we, when we're feeling disconnected, make those efforts to reconnect? And whether it's in conflict or outside of conflict, that's so important.
And is that a discussion that you would have with your partner and say, hey, are we committed to making the repairs of these ruptures?
Yeah. And just having a conversation, like knowing what ruptures and repairs are, right? So it's like, what is a rupture? It's a moment of disconnection or an emotional wounding, and they can be really small. They can be really big. Big ruptures are more of like attachment injuries, where there's been a huge break in trust, but the little ones could just be like not maybe someone not showing empathy or not asking you how your day was when you expect them to. That could be a rupture. And so when ruptures happen over and over again without repair, you slowly disconnect and build those protective walls. And that's when you start to see more resentment and anger and apathy and doubt coming up in a relationship, because if there's a lot of repeated ruptures and wounding, it damages the emotional bond and you don't feel safe anymore. And so like we talked about, our subconscious is always looking at, does the other person care? Are they there for me? Can I trust them? And so if we don't repair it, like it hurts the trust and the intimacy, and it's kind of like a slow burn with more distance over time. And so, finding emotional like completion after conflict or negativity and hurts, if we don't, the resentment builds up. And so we kind of have to emotionally digest, these issues together and create emotional safety and reconnect to move forward. So repairs are just, it's a way to just shift the energy and reconnect and to show that you love each other. But
well, I got a question for you, Jordan. Let's just keep going, girl, because this is fascinating. Is it ever too far gone? Is a rupture so bad that there is no repair?
It depends on if there's a willingness to repair on both parts. The biggest rupture maybe you could be seen as infidelity. That's one that is a huge rupture because there's I call that an attachment wound. Like rupture is there's a rupture, but when it's that deep, it's an attachment wound. And those are really, really tough to get through. And it is possible if both are willing to make the efforts to repair. If the person who maybe was the one who did that behavior and ruptured the relationship is willing to take responsibility and cares about the other person and cares to repair. And if both are willing to repair, it's possible, but it takes a lot of effort and it's not easy to do. And so like we've talked about repairs, like the positivity turning towards each other every day. There are ways to repair, every day with the little ruptures. And those are the deposits to the emotional bank account. And during conflict is the best time to make repairs. It's a way to shift the energy and reconnect and remember that you love each other. And how you repair depends on the nature of the rupture, but just simple ways of repairing are showing your attention, expressing curiosity and affection, maybe reaching out to hold their hand and saying how much you appreciate them, doing something nice for them, making them food, saying I love you. There are lots of different ways to repair, and it's hard to do. It can be really hard to do in conflict when we're wanting to pull away, when we're feeling hurt, but those are the times when it's most important to repair. And so it looks different, whether it's during conflict or just the everyday repairs or deposits or after conflict. It looks a little bit different, but it's just bringing in more of that connection and care and positivity is what makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that so much. And my husband and I have a rule that like if we're in conflict, whoever can become emotionally sober first, normally I'm the one that needs to walk away. I need the 20 minutes, like what you said, I need to regroup myself and then I come back in the room. And so usually if we're in conflict and I walk out the room, whoever is able to emotionally get sober first, we've made a pinky swear with each other that you walk into the room, whoever's in the mood first, walk into the room and go, baby! And if you're listening to this on podcast, I put my arms up straight in the air and I smile and I scream it like with that voice. Even when we're mad at each other, even when we're livid with each other, we've made a deal that one of us must do it. And it works like a charm because the second, even if you're mad at them, the second someone walks in and does that, it's like, wow, he's willing to put it all aside. And he's like, he's happy. He's got his arms up. The tone of his voice is welcoming and it shifts the mood immediately. Now, the only problem is sometimes you don't feel like responding, right? You're like, no, I'm still hurt. I'm still upset by you. And so once that happened and I did the baby and he was still pissed. And I said, we made a deal. You know how hard it is for me to break out and for me to do the baby? We agreed you can never push back because it's hard to be the first person to do that. And we agreed that if someone does, the other person must reciprocate. And I said, you've just broken our deal. You must. And then, of course, I got mad. So then he was like, baby. I'm like, no, I'm mad. And it became like this like back and forth for 3 times. And then at the end, after like the 3rd time, we're like, okay, this is ridiculous. We both are just, trying to make it better. We're trying to heal. We're trying to, repair this wound. And we're like, kind of like actually opening the wound more and more. So let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. We did the baby and then we solved our problem.
I love that you found that fun way to make repairs. You're doing it naturally. And we do it naturally without realizing that we're doing it. But sometimes when we put language to it, it gives context. And then we can be more conscious to look out for, do we need a repair? Has there been a rupture? And how does that happen? And you can plan like you've made that decision. Like, this is how we repair. This is how we show each other I'm trying to make a repair right now. And you can even just say, I'm trying to reconnect. I'm trying to make things better. This is really hard for me, but I'm trying to show you that I love you. Right. And some couples come up with like a code word like giraffe or, like watermelon or just something silly that's like an inside joke. And that humor can really help to break the ice and to bring you back together and remind each other we love each other. This is why we're here together. It's totally normal to experience times of disconnection in our relationships. A lot of people think that we shouldn't have conflict. We have these beliefs from childhood or just from society that we shouldn't have conflict, that and so we avoid it or we feel like there's something wrong. But it's totally normal to experience conflict. It's totally normal to experience times of disconnection in your relationship. And we usually go through cycles of connection and disconnection, cycles of closeness and more distance. And that's pretty normal, but it does take work to reconnect when there's distance or if you're feeling disconnected. Because we can't expect to see change in the relationship if we're not changing our thoughts and words and our actions and patterns of communicating and interacting and making efforts to show each other that we love each other.
That's fantastic. There's something that I heard you say where I was like, oh, we've got to talk about this, because again, it goes to like the nuance of the comment. So I've heard you actually say that there are certain fundamental needs that every single human human needs. And there's two that I pulled out, and it was actually an Instagram post that you did. And there's two. One was certainty and the other one was uncertainty. And so I was like, that is so amazing that they contradict each other, and yet you need both. And in a relationship, I think we look for certainty. And the second there is uncertainty, it makes us feel unnerved in the relationship. So how do we take the fundamental needs as a human of the uncertainty of growing, and yet use that as a strength in our relationship instead of potentially a weakness?
Yeah, and there is a balance, right? Because we want to feel a sense of safety and emotional security in a relationship, but at the same time, if there isn't any sort of uncertainty, and uncertainty can look like a lot of different things. It can look like surprises, like that we're going on a surprise date. You know, that's the fun sort of uncertainty, that it's really healthy to have a good balance of that. And uncertainty in the sense that we also like recognizing we don't know everything about each other. I've been in a relationship with someone for 8 years and we're still learning about each other every day. And so there's that balance between the certainty and the uncertainty. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, especially in our external world, in our environment, especially this last year and a half, there's been a lot of uncertainty in the world. Our relationships can help to buffer us from that when we create a sense of safety and certainty and in the relationship. But there's a balance. There's a balance to everything.
If you want to learn what boundaries to set to avoid betrayal and manipulation, then click here right now.
When somebody makes you doubt your boundary or question it, do they have my best interest in mind? And the answer is always going to be no.